I mean, there's no specific story that comes to mind. I mean, there's Red Spider and a whole lot of stuff that you guys have done over the years, you know, which has talked about money laundering, wrongdoings by bureaucrats, by politicians, and I think these truths need to come out. We need to know what really is happening, and that's why I think investigative journalism has, you know, gained more relevance over time. Sadly, as the society becomes more dishonest, scams increase, and media houses choose to not tell those stories, journalism of this kind becomes more and more relevant. This, whether you call it the brand of journalism or the way, what the responsibility of journalism ought to be, is to bring out the truth. And one of the pillars is of this kind of investigative journalism, where we do not get to know the truth and then somebody has to dig deeper. And this kind of journalism is decreasing. Tehelka was one such pillar, and when it started, I remember we all contributed and, you know, wanted that voice to be heard. There were journalists who were stronger, who were more fearless, you know, who also wanted to do a particular kind of journalism, and all that is now getting compromised, some of it because of the pressures of the corporate world, of the political clout. Some of it is happening almost like self-censorship, where people want to play safe, they don't want to really stick their necks out. So I think that space is becoming sadly narrower and narrower. There are less and less people who are ready to put their neck on the line. So I mean, other than Tehelka, and which now has got quite a beating for various reasons, I think probably Cobra Post is probably one of the only ones that is left which is doing at this stage, I mean, of this scale. I think there are some local journalists and some smaller magazines who are trying to do it, but probably I don't know if they are as successful as Cobra Post. Well, any initiative you take, you want it to be sustainable. And so it's not really only about for-profit or non-profit, but you want to make it sustainable so that you're not dependent. If you're going to be for-profit and compromise, then it will defeat the purpose. If you're going to be sort of non-profit and you have to every time look for funds and you have to be dependent on various funders, and therefore, you know, that also is a difficult scenario. So I don't know in terms of back end what is a better model, but I think a more sustainable model where also you can actually, you know, sort of fulfill the purpose with which you have started. Those two are more important things, and whether it's for profit or non-profit, I think both ought to be working as long as you can keep your integrity and not be sort of beholden to whoever is funding the projects. Patrons, by its very nature, if you are thinking of money, then we are looking at a particular class. In terms of support, I think, I'm sure you will get a lot of support across class, people who want to know the truth, because we are also viewers. We are first viewers, we are first sort of receivers of information. We all want to be getting the right information. So we have a right to that information. So, you know, in many ways, in that sense, I think across class you will find supporters. In terms of patrons, again, it's narrowing down, because often it's against the interest of those who have the capacity to fund these things. But having said that, I want to optimistically believe that there are enough people who would want to support an initiative like this. I mean, even for that matter, I remember when Tehelka started, you know, whether some of us gave 10,000 or some of us gave 1 lakh, or which is in some sense a small amount, but there were many such people who came together and said, yes, we want this kind of journalism, and people did pool in. And someone probably gave 500 rupees, and, you know, so the idea was more also what we could now call crowdfunding, and it's become very savvy. But in some ways there have been projects and initiatives that have come from the grassroots where people have contributed. So I think if one really looks around, there are patrons, and I think they can support it with stories, they can support it with their money, they can support it with their skill, they can support it with their infrastructure. And these are, I mean, journalism is such a pillar of our society. Free speech is something that is so intrinsic, that is something that we all hold dear to ourselves, because it's also individual freedom, it's collective freedom. So I do hope at least that there are enough people who will support initiatives like Cobra Post. But fearlessness has become a little more obsolete than it used to be. I think there were far more people who were more fearless. I think these days everybody is trying to play a little more safe, because when there are more of us, I think you feel more fearless, because you know that you have each other to support. You feel more fearful when you've been marginalized, you're alone, when you're the only one doing something like that. So I think more people join in if there are more Cobra posts, if there are more people who are saying, listen, we are ready to bring out stories like this, if they find more patrons, if they find more viewers who say, yes, we want this kind of journalism, I think it will also gain more support. So definitely fearlessness is something that we need, and if there are less such people, if there are less such initiatives, then more the reason that we should support it. You know, Tehelka is still different. I mean, in terms of it's because yours is more sting operation based, one is always a little apprehensive in terms of course, the kind of sting operations you do, the intent is very clear, but it has also been maligned, this space of sting operation. So how do you bring in a certain integrity to sort of, you're invading someone's privacy, at the same time you have a right to, if that person's doing, say, something against national security, something against, you know, religious conduct, or I don't know, whatever, money laundering, etc. So I think these are nuanced things, and it's important also that someone like Cobra Post also brings us and educates people at large, also the need for it. Otherwise, sting operation has also got a bit of a bad name, and I hope that that's also something that you will do. And also how to increase better investigative journalists, to also groom young journalists to understand and not just see it as a sting operation, but investigative journalist is much more than just a sting operation. So I hope the definition of that also will be widened. Well, the kind of journalism that is getting the highest TRP, and without naming anybody, is kind of sensational journalism, you know, where facts are almost looking like fiction, with music in the background and all of that, with shrill sounds, with debates that almost don't intend to resolve anything. So in times like this, where in a way all our information is finally from the media, it's not possible for any individual to go deeper into subjects beyond a point and find out the truth. So I think the importance of investigative journalism is much more today than it has ever been, and therefore as viewers, as you know, receivers of all of this, we need to definitely support initiatives like Cobra Post and other investigative journalism, and hopefully both as viewers and as young journalists, people will be part of this movement in a way. But I'm just saying, for instance, now there are so many, these NGOs are being attacked, right, by saying that they are anti-development, anti-environment. I mean, I think that's a huge threat of any voice of dissent is being squashed pretty much, and that's such an important part of democracy. So if there is a way that investigative journalism can also expand itself and come to mean to give also space for more free speech, for freer journalism, for more honest journalism. So by not sort of narrowing its definition to only investigative journalism. So I don't know, because I think there will be many such attacks that will happen in the coming months, years, and if there is a way to counter that, because most of the media is really towing the line, you know, countering the kind of journalism that we are seeing otherwise, where there is a kind of a silence over many issues, or let's not touch this, let's not talk about this. And if you can break that, it's tough. It's not an easy thing, because you'll be attacked. There will be people who will try to shut you up as well, but that's the challenge. And I think there are young people who are wanting such spaces and wanting to do it, but they also don't know where to go. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. If you keep waiting for those journalists to come and they keep waiting for such opportunities, it's going to be never ending.